All right, today we're going to talk about a story that has been giving people nightmares for over 100 years now. It's a true classic of horror fiction, W. Jacobs' The Monkey's Paw.
You know the question, right? We've all daydreamed about it. What would you do? Ask for a ton of money, true love, maybe happiness? The sky's the limit. But what if that fantasy had a really, really dark side? This story is all about that. Because in this story, every single wish comes true. But, and this is a huge but, it's how they come true that's the real kicker. It's like the story is basically saying that if you try to mess with fate, well, fate has a way of messing with you right back. And it doesn't just bend you, it breaks you. A cursed talisman, an unwelcome guest. So, picture this. It's a dark and stormy night. Classic horror setup, right? And inside this cozy little house, Laburnum Villa, you've got the White family. There's Mr. and Mrs. White and their grown-up son, Herbert. They're just chilling by the fire, you know? It's a perfect picture of a quiet, happy family life. But that quiet evening gets interrupted. An old friend, Sergeant Major Morris, shows up. Now, this guy has been away for 21 years serving in India. He's seen things. He brings all these wild stories from the far corners of the British Empire right into their safe little English home. And with him, he brings this sense of mystery and, as they're about to find out, some serious danger. And yeah, he brings something with him from that world. He's kind of hesitant about it, but he shows them this weird object. It's a dried up, mummified monkey's paw. Super creepy. He tells them an old holy man in India, a fakir, put a spell on it. But you know what? This spell wasn't designed to bring you good luck. No, its whole purpose, as Morris explains, was to prove a point. The fakir wanted to show that fate is in charge, and that anyone who tries to interfere with it, well, they're just asking for trouble. It's not about getting what you want. It's a trap. A really grim lesson that you just can't cheat destiny. This is really the heart of the story, right? Our desires versus what's meant to be. And the paw has a history, a really dark one. It grants 3 wishes to 3 separate people. Morris, he's already used his 3 wishes, and he won't even talk about what happened. It's that bad. And the guy before him, get this, his 3rd and final wish was for death. Morris is dead serious with his warning. In fact, he gets so worked up he literally chucks the paw into the fireplace and tells Mr. White to just let it burn. The first wish, a harmless game. But of course, Mr. White doesn't let it burn. He's curious, right? So he snatches it out of the fire. And this is such a critical moment. Even after hearing all these terrible warnings, the temptation is just too much. The family kind of shrugs it all off as just a spooky story. They're a little bit skeptical, a little bit greedy, and they just can't leave it alone. Their son, Herbert, is trying to keep things light. He's joking around, saying they'll wish to be rich and famous and happy. But what's interesting is that even though they have a good life, the first thing they think of is money. Herbert suggests something that sounds pretty reasonable, almost boring. Wish for £200 to pay off the last bit of their mortgage. Seems harmless enough, right? So that's what they do. With his family kind of smirking and watching, Mr. White holds up that creepy paw, just like Morris told him to. And he says it out loud, "I wished for £200. And bam, this is the first real moment of horror. It's not like some cartoon genie puffing out smoke. No, it's something wrong. Mr. White yells and drops the paw, swearing that it twisted in his hand like a live snake. The others just laugh it off, say he imagined it. But you can feel it. That first little seed of fear has been planted. If this magic is real, it's not good magic. It's ugly. A terrible price, the cost of coincidence. Okay, so the next morning, the sun is out, and all that spooky stuff from the night before just seems kinda silly. The paw's just sitting there looking like a piece of junk. Herbert even makes a few jokes about the money before he heads off to work at the factory. They remember Morris saying the wishes come true so naturally, you could almost write it off as a coincidence. But later that day, a man shows up. He's all dressed up, looking very official, and he's acting weird. He's pacing outside their house before he finally gets up the nerve to knock. He says he's from Ma and Megan's, and that's where Herbert works. And just like that, Mrs. White's heart sinks. She knows something is wrong. The man delivers the news, and it's the worst news imaginable. There was an accident at the factory. Herbert was caught in the machinery. He's dead. And the man, trying to be comforting, I guess, he says that Herbert is not in any pain. And it just takes a second for the horrible meaning of that phrase to sink in. So then the man explains that the company isn't taking any legal blame, of course, but they want to offer the family some money, a compensation payment for their son. And Mr. White, who's just in this state of shock and horror, he can barely even speak, but he manages to ask, how much? 200 pounds, the exact amount they wished for. And there it is. The wish came true. And just like Morris said it would, it happened in a way that you could technically call a coincidence. And that's what makes this story so brilliant and so terrifying. This isn't magic with sparkles. It's the cold, awful mechanics of fate, twisting their wish into the worst possible outcome. They got the money for their house, and the price was their son's life. The knock at the door, a mother's grief. So the first wish was a complete and utter tragedy, and it sets the stage for an even more terrifying ending. They bury Herbert, and the house is just filled with this awful, crushing silence. But then, about a week later, Mrs. White has this wild, desperate idea. She remembers they still have 2 wishes. She starts begging her husband, pleading with him to use the second wish to bring Herbert back. Mr. White is horrified. He's thinking about the first wish, and he's terrified of what exactly they would be inviting back into their house. But his wife, she's just lost in her grief. She's desperate. She cries, "Do you think I fear the child I have nursed?" She truly believes a mother's love can fix this. But Mr. White, he remembers. He remembers what the man from the factory said. He tries to get through to her, reminding her just how gruesome the accident was. Their son's body was so mangled, he said, I could only recognize him by his clothing. But she won't listen. Her grief is just too strong. And finally, just beaten down by her hysteria and terrified of her, he gives in. He takes the paw, and he makes the second wish. I wish my son alive again. At first, nothing. Just silence. They're waiting, and it feels like it didn't work. And then they hear it, a quiet little knock on the front door. Then it comes again, a little louder this time. And then again and again, getting louder and faster until it's this frantic banging echoing through the whole house. Mrs. White is screaming, "It's Herbert, it's Herbert," and she runs to unlock the door. But Mr. White, he's on the floor in absolute panic, scrambling around in the dark, desperate to find that paw for one last wish. He finds it just as his wife is pulling back the bolt on the door. He finds the paw and makes his third and final wish. And instantly, the knocking stops. Just like that. Complete silence. Mrs. White throws the door open and there's nothing there. Just a cold wind blowing down a dark, empty street. The price of fate and analysis. So what are we supposed to take away from this absolutely terrifying story? Well, beyond just being a great horror yarn, it's really a deep dive into fate, the dangers of wanting what you don't have, and how grief can make people do crazy things. The real horror isn't some monster. It's the wishes themselves. Let's just break down how perfectly and how horribly each one was twisted. I mean, just look at the cruel logic here. They wish for 200 pounds to make their life a little better. And they get it as compensation for their dead son. Blood money. Then they wish for their son to come back to life. Not really out of pure love, but because they can't handle the grief. And what do they get? Some mangled thing banging on their door. And that last wish? It wasn't for wealth or happiness. It was just a desperate wish for the horror to go away, leaving them with nothing but an empty house and the terrible, quiet finality of their loss. And that leaves us with this one big, haunting question. Was that old holy man right all along? Is fate really in charge and we're just fooling ourselves? Or is there another possibility? Maybe the paw has no real magic at all. Maybe the real horror is just in our own heads. A story about how grief and guilt can make you connect dots that aren't there, turning a horrible coincidence into a curse you put on yourself. Whichever way you look at it, the message is pretty clear. Trying to change your fate, even for what seems like a good reason, is a recipe for disaster. So yeah, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it.